The Lost Echoes. Lena was driving home from her grandmother's house late one autumn evening. The last golden light of dusk fading into the cool, dark night. Her car's headlights swept across the winding road, which disappeared into the thick, shadowy forest that bordered her path. It had been a quiet visit, nothing out of the ordinary. But Lena always felt uneasy when driving through these woods. The place was steeped in local legend. They called it the Whispering Woods. People said that if you listened carefully, you could hear voices soft, indistinct murmurs carried by the wind. Some claimed they were the voices of lost souls. Others thought they were simply the wind rustling through the trees. But the locals, especially the older ones, warned against traveling through the woods after dark. Lena was about to dismiss it all as superstition when she heard it. The first faint whisper. She frowned, thinking it was just the rustling of the wind through the branches. But then the voice came again. This time clearer, almost like it were coming from the back seat of the car.
Lena,
Her heart skipped a beat. She glanced nervously at the rearview mirror. Empty. Her fingers tightened on the steering wheel, and she pressed the gas pedal a little harder, trying to shake the creeping feeling of dread that had suddenly settled over her. The road ahead seemed to stretch on longer than it should, and the woods appeared to close in tighter with every passing moment. A cold draft seemed to brush her neck, and the whisper came again, closer this time.
Lena,
Help me. Her eyes darted to the rearview mirror again. Still no one. Lena's mind raced. The road was deserted, no other cars in sight, and her phone had no signal. She should have taken the longer route around the woods, but now it was too late. The whispers were louder, unmistakably coming from behind her, and the air in the car felt thicker, colder. Suddenly, there was a soft tapping sound on the back window. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. Slowly, she turned her head to look. The back window was fogged over with condensation, but in the mist, she could see something shapes, moving inside the fog like fingers pressing against the glass. The voice came again, this time not from behind her but from the front. Lena, you have to stop. She slammed her foot on the brake, the tires screeching as the car lurched to a stop in the middle of the road. Her hand shook as she glanced around, terrified. There was nothing. No one. The woods were silent now. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She should have just kept driving. But the whispering was still there, pulling her toward the trees. A strange compulsion overtook her as she grabbed the door handle. She needed to know who or what was out there. She stepped out into the cold night air, her shoes crunching on the gravel. The moon was barely visible through the thick canopy of trees, but she could still make out the faint outline of something in the distance. Barely visible but distinct and old, weathered shack that she had never seen before. It wasn't there when she passed this way earlier, was it? Lena felt a chill crawl down her spine. She began walking toward it, against every instinct screaming at her to run back to the car. But something was drawing her in. The whispers grew louder with each step. Lena! She reached the door of the shack and hesitated for only a moment before pushing it open. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and decay. A single flickering light bulb hung from the ceiling, illuminating a figure seated in the corner. It was an old woman, her skin pale and stretched tight over bones, her hair wild and unkempt. She was humming softly, her hands folded in her lap. Her eyes were wide open, unblinking, staring directly at Lena.
you shouldn't have come, the old woman whispered.
Her voice like dry leaves scraping across the ground. Lena's heart pounded in her chest. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could say anything, the old woman continued.
They are waiting for you.
Suddenly, the whispers flooded the air, not from the woman but from all around her. They were everywhere, rising, drowning out the woman's voice, until the whole world seemed to be alive with them. Lena stumbled backward, her legs trembling. Her mind reeled.
They're not just whispers, the old woman murmured, her lips curling into a strange,
toothless smile.
they're the lost ones. And now they have you.
Lena turned and ran, her feet pounding against the wooden floor, her heart hammering in her chest as the whispers chased her through the trees. The wind howled like 1,000 voices, and for the first time, she understood the legends. She would never leave the woods.